Afternoon, folks. It is time for another mainly pointless gripe rant about Warhammer 40,000. I hope you're having a wonderful day and a wonderful week. If you like what I do, the subscribe button is down below. Please hit that if you're new here, because it really does help me in the algorithm and it helps me get towards my 15,000 subscriber target towards the end of the year. That is the end of the year target. Hopefully we get there. Hopefully you can help me get there. If you're new here, again, click the button. And yeah, let's get into some ranting, shall we? Because I've got a lot of marking to do today, and I've got a lot of things to do before the evening kicks off. So, let's jump in. I wrote this script last night, mainly with the proviso that, you know, I've read mostly everything to do with Magnus, and I realised me, being a Warhammer aficionado of some limited report, I don't read a lot of books cover to cover in terms of Warhammer, right? I love Warhammer literature, but I tend to skip around quite a lot. So I'll read some books to do with Perturabo or some books to do with Angron, right? And I'll finish those, but in terms of entire series and entire meandering pathways of stories within Warhammer 40,000 or the Horus Heresy, I don't tend to finish those. And I think I'm in the majority when it comes to that. You know, I don't really... I'll read the odd book on Lorgar, like the First Heretic, but I won't then go on and immediately read Betrayer. I'll read something else, right? I'll flitter around somewhat. Magnus is the first Primarch where I've been able to essentially follow his story from start to finish in 2 or 3 books. That's not a good thing, considering that everybody else in the Horus Heresy gets a whole load of airtime. Magnus is one of my favourite characters in Warhammer, and so the actual title of this video can sometimes lead you down the garden path a little bit. But please bear with me, because I do have a point to make in how Magnus, the Red, is the biggest missed opportunity in Warhammer 40,000. But he's not in Horus Heresy, and I'd like to get into why. So, Magnus is complex, and that's fine. But he does come with some serious issues in total tonal whiplash. His actions in Prospero Burns are kind of all over the place. He forces his legion to stand down and actively sabotages them against the Space Wolves, as he is full of remorse for ruining the Golden Throne project of the Emperor. Again, I am preaching to the choir here, I know. If you want more bog standard lore as it happened, go and listen to somebody like the Amber King. He has an amazing video on Magnus over there. There are tons of videos on Magnus that you can go and watch. I am a finishing school, I would say, in terms of lore. You come here for your more esoteric projects. You come here for your opinion pieces, right? You go to Amber King and guys like him to learn like you're in university, and I am the seminar group. That is an offshoot of your university program where you come and you discuss things with your fellow Warhammer academics. That's where we are, and we're discussing today why Magnus is a bit of a missed opportunity. So, this is not something any sane protagonist does, okay? You don't just lower the shields on your own world and, you know, and say, okay, I deserve this, my sons deserve this. Bring it on, Space Wolves, right? It's a device by which the writers give the Space Wolves an easy win. Prospero Burns as a book is not about the Thousand Sons, it's about the Space Wolves, and that's just terrible. By the time Magnus snaps out of it and helps his sons, it's already far too late. He gets beaten down by Leman Russ, and that's pretty much the end of his story for a while, as his soul is broken into shards by being beaten down by Russ. A very disappointing start to his time in the Horus Heresy, but this is low-key my favourite character arc in the Horus Heresy. And that's going to seem like a weird thing to say, because Magnus gets a lot of flack. He gets a lot of stuff thrown at him that I don't think he deserves. He did do things wrong, by the way. I'm not one of those people who say he did nothing wrong. The people who say Magnus did nothing wrong say that Griffith did nothing wrong in Berserk, and both of you are wrong. Unlike other Primarchs who start well in the Horus Heresy, and then are gradually ruined by the meme factory that is Warhammer 40,000, Magnus never really gets his time to shine in the Horus Heresy. At all. I mean, let's just cover what happens in brief before we go into detail. His soul is split into shards, he acts as a quest MacGuffin for the Khan to talk to, and finally he gets to Terra and speaks to the Emperor before refusing to give up his sons to return to the Emperor's side. He then fully joins the traitors in a confusing back and forth, now apparently disdainful of the Emperor. This is a ruse though, and this is what I mean by Magnus's entire character being brought down to a caricature at the worst possible time. The main strength of Magnus's character is his utter dependability to do what he thinks is right, and to do what he thinks will also benefit him, right? He is a predictable Primarch, and that's not a bad thing. Writing a predictable character isn't bad, okay? Writing a predictable, boring character is bad, but if you've got a compelling character who we know so well that we know how he's going to act, that can give us huge parts of dramatic irony and all sorts of other tools that writers can use to really pull in some really cool feeling into what's going on, and Magnus is one of those characters. He is pulled down, however, by hubris time and again, right? As he thinks that only he really has the answers. He's one of those characters, alright? Only I have the answers. Only I can get things right. Only I can make sure that everything's going to be working well and everything's going to be fine. You all need to trust me. I know what's going on. And I think we all have a bit of that in us, especially as nerds. Right? We all have that, especially world builders. And world builders get into this a lot, where they're like, you know, I know what's right for my own story, right? Just bear with me. You don't want to listen to anybody else's advice. You say, no, bear with me. I'll get it right. Magnus is one of those people, right? He is pulled down by hubris time and again, even when his motivations are pure and good, even when technically he's on the right path. His hubris destroys his ambitions and his plans over and over again. For instance, when under the Imperial Palace and speaking to Malcador, there is a real sense that Magnus can be swayed over to the Emperor's side once again. Any of you who have read Magnus's Primarch novel will know what I'm talking about here. Magnus goes out of his way to save refugees on the Imperial side on his way to this meeting. Although a traitor, but not yet a demon, Magnus is still himself, somewhere deep within. When he strikes Malcador down in that book, although Mal later does live, he gets revived, he is genuinely remorseful. But what does he do? He takes stock of the situation and immediately resolves to kill the Emperor. Magnus wants to decide his own fate. He thinks he sees paths that others do not, and in doing so, he becomes a pawn for much bigger people above him. In essence, the only thing Magnus ever does wrong is believe in his own potential without limit. No other Primarch shows the dangers of hubris quite like Magnus, not even Horus. Right? Horus is tricked at the end of the day. They use his arrogance against him, yes, but he's also tricked. And if he refuses the deal, he will die, right? You know, he's given a catch-22. Yeah, he really is, Horus. I honestly think somebody like Magnus makes for a better War Master than Horus. Not in just how he is, but the story that is told around him. There is a real tragic story around Magnus that fits in very well together. It is an actual a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whereas Horus is kind of, you know, there's a lot of MacGuffins involved in getting Horus to side with Chaos. There's a lot of because we need it to happen in the plot, you know, that's happening with Horus. In all honesty, I would actually give Magnus's story arc minus the psychic stuff to Horus. You know, but yeah, meld in those themes of hubris and well-meaning arrogance that really leads to somebody to have a fall, and a serious fall at that. That could have been a really cool thing for Horus to do. Instead, we get magical MacGuffins and not very compelling writing. But that's why I love Magnus so much. That's why I'm a huge Magnus fan, even though I'm not a huge fan of the Thousand Sons. There is something really cool about the Horus Heresy as well. You can be a really big fan of a Legion without being a fan of its Primarch. I know lots of people who really love the Iron Warriors, but don't really like Perturabo. I know people who are the other way. They love Perturabo, but they're not too sure on the Iron Warriors. And so on and so forth, right? That's pretty cool. And I'm the same with the Thousand Sons. I'm not really sure on the Thousand Sons as a legion, but Magnus I really, really like. Mainly through the power of his writing. So, what Magnus wanted from Malcador in this story was the shard of himself, shattered by Russ earlier on in our story, that represented his nobility, as in most of his positive attributes. The fact that Magnus shows compassion and empathy even without this shard could be a writer oversight, but I try to look at it as a true testament to how tragic of a character he really is. Even without his most noble components, Magnus is still a good guy fighting for the little guy. Right? That's still who he is deep down. So now we come to the choice of Magnus to not give up his sons. This is the choice that leads him finally to become a full Chaos Primarch, right? He is shown by the Emperor when finally reaching his throne room the future that could still happen in a vision. Humanity ruling the stars in a utopia, and Magnus sitting on the golden throne, his soul in constant bliss, as he and the Emperor unravel the secrets of the universe and its grand design. In essence, he is offered everything Magnus has ever asked for. Everything that Magnus has ever asked for, wanted, or worked towards, he's offered in a single swoop. Bang. Here you go. Right? The price for this, though, is giving up his Thousand Sons Legion, as they are tainted. They will be replaced by the Grey Knights, and will act under Magnus's psychic leadership. But Magnus, of course, refuses. The pain of losing his sons is too much to bear. This will come back later. Only now does Magnus fully submit to Chaos, becoming a demon to escape the Emperor's forces as they move in for the kill. Again, this is a man struggling against fate and the plans of others to forge a path for himself. But through his own arrogance, he is almost always led down the garden path by the true big bads of the setting, i.e. the Emperor, and he is one of the big bads of the setting, and the Chaos Gods. I truly think that the only reason Magnus is a part of the Chaos Gods' plans is because they're kind of honest with him. They're evil. They're not good people, but they're honest about it. You know, the Emperor professes to be his father. The Emperor professes to be this guy who will always have his back, who will always, you know, be there for him. But the minute Magnus shows any hesitation in taking the deal, he sends Vulcan to crush his skull. The second there's any hesitation, the deal is off, right? Later on in the story, when Vulcan and Magnus are dueling in the webway, it's Vulcan who hesitates in killing Magnus, full stop, right? It's Vulcan who hesitates, and it's the Emperor who urges Vulcan to make the shot, to bring the hammer down, to kill Magnus for good. He's desperate for it to happen. I think Magnus saw something in the Emperor that he didn't like in making that choice. I actually really like the back and forth between Vulcan and Magnus in the Imperial Palace, even though it gets a lot of flack, mainly because it's an elegant way of giving two Primarchs who aren't really involved in the siege something to do. Alright? In the webway, at the story's conclusion, this is how you write two Primarchs going at each other. So, Magnus is in the webway conducting a ritual that is weakening the Emperor on the Golden Throne, trying to get more demons in, because now he's fully committed towards Chaos, and screwing over this guy, because he's like, well, fuck you. If you don't want me, I'll take everything away from you then. Because I've got what I wanted, right? It's not perfect, but it's mine, right? So he tries to weaken the Emperor from inside the webway. Vulcan goes in there to put a stop to it. And so they duel. And this is how you write a proper Primarch duel. They act like they do in real, and not in real life, but like they do normally, right? Magnus uses his psychic power to annihilate Vulcan again and again and again and again, but Vulcan isn't even mainly trying to defend himself. He's getting a hit in here and there, accepting his death, and then regenerating as a perpetual every single time. He grinds, he's using his perpetual nature to grind down the much more powerful Magnus. So, with this duel, you do two things. You showed the reader that Magnus could kill Vulcan many times over, so because you know Magnus is going to lose this duel, so you give him an out. It's like good booking in wrestling, right? You don't want anyone to lose their heat. If you just book someone to lose and not get anything out of it, it's like a squash match. They get nothing out of it, right? A really good story is when the villain or the person who's supposed to lose loses, but loses in a heroic way. Loses in a way you go, wow, that guy was powerful, right? And on another day, it could have gone the other way. Vulcan and Magnus are the same here, right? Magnus kills Vulcan many times, but Vulcan keeps coming back. When Vulcan can't bring the hammer down for the final blow, however, Magnus fucking atomizes him, shredding him apart at the genetic level. That's how powerful Magnus is. He unmakes a Primarch at the genetic level to try to kill him for good. But the hammer comes down anyway, and both of them kill each other almost at the same time, with Magnus being banished back to the warp, and Vulcan being obliterated, and it takes him thousands of years for his body to rejuvenate again from that one attack, right? Nicely done. And Magnus almost weakening the Emperor within Webway is a really good showcase of his power. This is why I like the story. And this is why I argue with my friends all the time that Magnus' story is a really good one in the Horus Heresy. It's just a shame that he's not given a lot of time to tell it in, and he's only in a few books. And that story I'm telling you now was from his Primarch novel. It's ridiculous, right? From a writing standpoint, the fall of Magnus is beautiful and tragic, and it's a lot better than Horus's, quite frankly. But we only see it a few times throughout the Horus Heresy, and even then, most of his best moments are either in closet Space Wolf books masquerading as Thousand Sons books, like Prospero Burns, or as cameos in other Primarch stories like Lorgar's, Horus's, and the Khan's. Magnus only really gets his own Primarch novella to shine in, and that's it. The quality of the storytelling, though, leads me to say that this is the biggest missed opportunity in the Horus Heresy, and we aren't even at 40k yet. We're just now getting there. The rant hasn't even started yet, ladies and gentlemen. Because finally, I've told you what I like about his story. Let's see when it doesn't work. And the more and more I do this series of videos, the more I read about 40k, the more I'm starting to just go, oh, God. We've really dropped the ball. We have really dropped the ball. Since the start of 8th edition, we have dropped the ball in terms of writing. So, Warhammer 40,000. Magnus has one decent piece of lore in the modern storyline of Warhammer 40k, and it's a storyline that takes place well before 8th edition drops. The reducing of his sons to dust. His reaction to this is beyond devastation. Remember what Magnus gave up to save his sons, right? He gave up his ultimate happiness to save his sons. Well, now through Ahriman's own hubris and the rubric of Ahriman, again, that word, just like his father in Magnus, really lovely writing, he has reduced the Thousand Sons to essentially dust robots in suits of armour to save them from their rampant mutations, right? Ahriman regrets this and seeks to reverse it as his greatest shame. Magnus is only stopped from killing him by Tzeentch himself. Lovely, lovely stuff. Everybody within this story, this piece of lore, is reacting in just the way they're supposed to as a character who's had lots of books, hundreds of thousands of words dedicated to who they are, right? When I say lots of books, I mean like 3, maybe, right? But still, he's a deep character, and this is an incredibly tragic moment where the only thing he has is his sons. That's it. And they're taken away from him by Ahriman, who, there's that word again, hubris. Through Ahriman's hubris, he seeks to cure the Legion of their genetic mutations, and in doing so, makes a big mistake because he overestimates his own abilities. Does that remind you of anyone else? Yeah, this is good writing. This is very good writing. This is the Thousand Sons acting like Thousand Sons and it coming back to bite them on the ass. That is the only time in Warhammer 40,000 that we get a good piece of Thousand Sons lore that deals with Magnus. Because from here, Magnus generally becomes the Imperium's punching bag. Whether it's Guilliman or the Space Wolves, everybody gets in on the act of kicking him while he's down. So, after all that intrigue and tragedy, what are we left with? Well, from the writing from there on in, with 8th edition, we are left with a demonic bad guy who hates the galaxy in general. He fails to destroy Fenris, is actively outthought by Lucas the fucking Trickster. Yes, even the avatar of the god of trickery in Magnus is not allowed to beat a Space Wolf at that very same thing. And you wonder why Space Wolves aren't liked. You wonder why they're not liked. We literally have an avatar of the god of trickery getting outthought and outtricked by somebody called Lucas the fucking Trickster. Magnus is about to destroy Lucas and his wolves in a story within 8th edition in an engagement fighting over portals on Prospero, right? Lucas tells him, hey, you need a scroll to take control of these portals, and I have it here, on this piece of parchment. The parchment is, of course, blank. And Lucas throws this to the ground and uses the distraction to escape through one of the portals with all of his men. This is so bad in terms of writing, it's laughable. I assume there's a few of you there chuckling at how bad that is as a piece of writing. And this is the microcosm of what is wrong with the lore in modern 40k. Instead of just killing off the secondary character, the writers at Games Workshop just cannot have the Space Wolves take a loss. Oh no. Instead, a mere Space Marine wins a battle of wits against Magnus, the literal best servant of the god of wits and trickery. Magnus is now a meme, ladies and gentlemen, a mustache-twirling creature shaking his fist at the sky going, "Those bloody wolves!" Right? That's who he is now. When a Space Wolf, a single one, not even the Primarch, not even a Chapter Master, a single random ass Space Wolf is outsmarting you, you need to just retire your fucking brain. Right? It is an egregious and shitty piece of the lore, but it's 8th edition, and 8th edition is written in this way. Character assassinations left, right and centre. And if I swear to you, if you have an army that you like or a piece of lore that you like, you best pray that they don't come across the Space Wolves, because if they do, the lore that you like will be twisted, abused and bent out of shape to give the Wolves yet another win that they don't fucking need. That's 8th, ladies and gentlemen. The Wolves aren't the only ones who are benefiting, don't get me wrong, but in this instance they are. And it's bullshit. It's bullshit. Listen, I'm a fan of the Word Bearers, and we had to lose Argel Tal. We had to lose him in the Horus Heresy, because he's killed by Erebus, right? That sucked. I hated that, because Argel Tal was amazing. An amazing character. Awesome character. Now, if the Space Wolves in this situation are Word Bearers, Lucas dies. I'm telling you. If the Space Wolves in this situation are Word Bearers, Lucas dies. And that's why 8th edition sucks. That's why it sucks. They won't kill even a minutia, a tiny character like Lucas the Trickster. They won't do it. They will not do it. They would rather bastardize and tear down and make fun of one of the only good characters they have, instead of pissing off the Space Wolf community. That's where we are in 8th edition. And it's not just the Wolves. This is across the board problem. Nobody dies in 8th edition. Everybody fights, everybody nods and goes, "Good fight," and then they leave. But there are some characters out there, like Magnus, who this doesn't work with. And you need to make fun of and tear them down in order to actually get your point across that they've been defeated this time around, right? This is why I say Primarchs don't really belong in Warhammer 40,000. They don't. Because to make them fit into the meme factory that is 40k these days, you need to bastardize them like this. Villains in 40k are not allowed to succeed, at least not for long, and especially not if their name is not Abaddon the Despoiler. Magnus doesn't belong in 40k. He is a deep, conflicted and damaged soul with a whole boatload of nuance and tragedy surrounding him. To be frank, he's too rich of a character to be in the meme factory that is modern Warhammer 40,000. I do not hate 40k as a setting. I love it. At least I did until the end of 7th edition. I just think it's lost its way since the start of 8th edition, and Magnus's behaviour since his return has been largely ineffectual, lazy, and laughable. Essentially, unfortunately, this brain-dead version of Magnus fits right in with modern-day Warhammer 40k. This brain-dead version of Magnus fits 40k. Right? But if this is the same guy who was in the Horus Heresy, who still has those regrets, who still has that depth and nuance and interest to him, if that's the same guy, he don't belong here. This is why I said it in our last few videos, and I'm trying to get the point across. The Primarchs in modern 40k are not the Primarchs. They are literally just demon guys. Just demon guys now. Right? They don't have any nuance, any depth whatsoever. They're just demon guys. Big old bad demon guys. Twirling mustache. You know, they're there to be beaten by Gilliman. They're there to be beaten by some random Space Wolf character. Because we're not allowed to give them a loss, ever. This is what I mean by the fact that modern 40k is disappointing to me. In terms of its nuance, in terms of its lore, in terms of its depth. We had a real opportunity with the start of 8th edition to take this thing to the stars. And I mean that. We could have moved the entire thing forward and absolutely made something for the ages. We could have made something that shits on Frank Herbert's Dune. We could have made something that shits on Star Wars and all those, Star Trek and all these other big properties that are out there. We could have had a grimdark answer, a British grimdark answer to a true galactic epic. And what are we left with? Lucas the fucking trickster tricking a demon god with a piece of blank parchment. I've been Northern Exile. I'm really annoyed. And I hope one day we get writers in 40k who can absolutely turn this ship around. It's doable. It's doable. But it's going to take one hell of a changing of the wind. Put it that way. Anyway, I'll speak to you tomorrow for some more Hobby Nightmares. I love you a long time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll see you then. Bye.